Hey everyone, this is Grit number 9 from Gearist. I am Brandon Wood. That is Aaron Garrett. What's going on, Aaron? How are you, sir?
I'm well. How are you?
I am getting over a cold, and I'm trying not to sneeze as I look into the camera and have my face an inch from the microphone because that would be loud and blow out everybody's eardrum. Thank you for asking. Doing well, apart from the cold thing. That's not fun. You know what I mean?
I do. Cold, allergies, all the above.
Well, I mean, it's tree sex time of the year, right? It's
Yep.
May 9th while we are recording this. And so there are a lot of trees boning, and that pollen is killing me, you
Yes.
know.
Oh
I
yeah. I mean, we're at the point here. You're familiar with the Mid Atlantic. I
Yep.
mean, this is pollen cloud season. So
Oh
I
yeah.
don't know if you can hear the wind outside, but it's windy, so you can just see billows of pollen leaving the
Yes.
trees, and you're rinsing your car off before you get in it, and it's
Yeah.
wonderful. You know.
And when I used to live there, my allergies would go insane, and it's mostly like hay fever, right? And then when I moved from there to New York, it got a lot better. Oddly, even though the air quality in New York City is probably not as good as it is in Hampton Roads. And then when I moved to Colorado, it got even better. But this time of year, every year, I try. So I take Flonase for allergies, and I try to take Flonase only for like that 3 weeks or a month, right now. Um, and usually like half of what I would because I think the body wants to fight those things itself, right? Produce its own antihistamines and things like that. Um, but I need that or I have like these crazy allergy attacks. That's what I thought this was when I kind of last Thursday or something like that started feeling kind of sniffly, and then it turned out no, it was just a cold. So but it's doing okay, you know? It's doing
Yeah.
okay. And today, so we're actually going to talk about that for people watching and listening. First thing, before we get into anything else, I would love for you guys to subscribe, like, share, comment. We want to hear some of those things. We're actually going to read a few comments today on the show because I have been remiss and reading some of those over the past few weeks. So we're going to get into some of those. But yeah, if you would like, comment, and share, we would really appreciate that. It would mean a lot to us. And that whether you're watching this on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, Stitcher, what's another one? Apple Podcasts, that would be wonderful. Overcast, all of those things. Spotify, we're on Spotify, so check that out. That would really help us out a lot. This is episode number 9, and today, before we get into what we're going to talk about running with a cold. Very specifically, here's how a cold works. Should you be running with that? We're coming out of COVID, and that's a really important factor, actually, because so many people. I mean, I remember this diagram because I saw it on my Facebook memories that were showing, and of course, this was April, March of 2020. And it's this diagram of here's why you shouldn't run or bike or whatever, and how virulent COVID is going to be behind you. It turns out that diagram was full of crap. But it's still like I've had COVID twice, and it's kind of like, well, when do you run? When do you go back out? When do you bike? Is there a difference between running and biking and swimming and climbing and lifting and all those things when you've had some sort of illness? So today we are going to be talking about running with a cold as I sniffle into the microphone. So I'll try not to do that too much. Sound good, Arron?
Yeah. Sounds good. Lots
Cool.
of lots of thoughts on the topic.
Good.
I've heard lots of thoughts on the topic. So
Awesome.
it'll be interesting.
Awesome. Well, so today, before we get into that, we're going to read a couple comments. Again, I apologize ahead of time for the sniffling. I'll try to mute when I can mute when Aaron is talking. But before we do that, let's read some comments. So this is from episode whatever. I think this is episode 7. Yes. Things to think about when shopping for running shoes. The top 5 things to think about. So Ben Schlossberg comments, good stuff. Just wanted to point out the idea of a training shoe versus a racing shoe. I use La Sportiva Bushido 2, stronger material, for training pre-race distances, and the Captiva a week or so before the race and on race day. As you mentioned, your lugs and cushion will vary between the shoe and its intended purpose. Also, the race day shoe is lighter, which I noticed during long races, giving me that little extra giddy up. And I said, hey, that's actually a really great point. And in his case, what he does, and this is what I would say to everybody, um, if you're going to use a different shoe for race day, don't just use it for race day. Like, know what that shoe is going to do to you. Seriously. I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, are you somebody, Aaron, generally speaking, and maybe this depends on whether you're doing a 5K or half marathon or marathon or ultra, are you somebody who wears a different training shoe from your race day shoe?
So yeah, I will wear a more cushioned shoe 9 out of 10 times training run. Come race day, I'd say anything marathon and shorter, I will wear a racing shoe, heavily
Sure.
air quoted racing shoe for me. So that could be something that's a little firmer, a little lighter, give me a little that extra pop that I
Yep.
know. Yeah, my feet may be sore post, but it's a race.
Yeah.
Um, but I will definitely go heavier, softer shoe for training. But for a 100 miler or 50 miler, I don't think you can really. At least I can't personally give up too much of that cushion and
For sure.
comfort. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's why there are racing flats and spikes for track athletes. You don't see those guys running in their spikes every day, right?
Right.
They save them for race day.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ben is an ultra runner as well. He's actually based out of Switzerland. And he does great. I mean, he's really a very thoughtful guy about these things. I know Ben, and so like having his input on stuff like that is really fantastic. And La Sportiva, in particular, that he's talking about using here, is a brand that has that variety of running shoes, and I feel like all brands do, right? I mean, kind of from a strictly from a revenue standpoint, they're saying, hey, Aaron, here's your training shoe, here's what you should race in, but that said, they're going to in that race shoe have maybe a carbon plate. We see the P-backs or whatever that's really going to add that pop, a little bit lightweight, but still, all those things that you just talked about. So yeah, for sure. Um, okay, so this is on our most recent episode prior to today, episode number 8, breaking down the parts of a marathon or ultra marathon or any race, quite frankly. So Matthew Garrity says, I am an aid station person as well. On my bike events, I tell myself I just need to go 15 miles to the next stop. I never think of the hill to come or the 100 miles to come after the aid station. Yeah, I agree. I mean, Aaron, that's what kind of he was talking. It's like measure. It's kind of the more that I thought about it after we had talked in our last episode, it was like if you're trying to control, because there's the Serenity Prayer, right? Control the things I can, sort of. I know that's not the Serenity Prayer, you guys, but it's the wisdom to know the difference between the things you can change and the things you cannot change, right? And so on an aid station, you have to control the things between this aid station and this aid station, right? Which may be, in his case, he's talking about 15 miles, or in Leadville, it's 10 miles in some cases, shorter and some longer in some. But you just have to control that piece. You don't have to control 100 miles, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I love that approach to it because it's okay. You can break down a race into okay, I've only got to get here, and then I can figure out what's to come.
That's right.
Because you could be in that dark place and come out of it by the next aid station,
Yeah.
or you could be in the happiest place in the world, and by the time you get to the aid station, you're in the dark place or approaching it. So yeah, I love the fact that you can break down a race into either segments or aid stations or things like that to really get to to get to the finish line.
Well, and I mean, what's interesting is that if you are in the dark place like you're talking about, a lot of that, as we discussed, is based on nutrition. It's based on nutrition, or maybe you've got a blister that's bugging you, or whatever it is. But the aid station is where you're going to have that chance to fix that, or at least address it and find out what's going on. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so GDK Mouse says the last ultra I did, I broke it down into smaller sections, but the pace was always changing, and eventually I always fall apart and end up as the slow one at the back of the pack. Very frustrating, to be honest. So I'm very curious about something like that because that has happened to me before as well. Um, and I kind of wonder, for me, now this isn't for you, GDK Mouse, or anybody else listening. I wonder if for me it's not a matter of, and I'll talk about kind of how this week went for me, putting my ego on the front end in check to go 10 seconds slower, or 10 beats per minute heart rate, whatever it is. Like, take a percentage off of that so that it comes back around and feels good later. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally. I've had those races where you start out 8:30, 9 minute, 10 minute pace,
Yeah.
and then you hit a good stretch and you go even faster, or you hit a hill, you go slightly slower, or you try and keep pace, and then yeah, by the end of it, you're sucking wind and
Yeah.
and walking and as I've gone through races, I find the better I, to your point, slow down in the beginning and conserve energy up front, the longer I can hold that pace or that feeling and into a
Right.
into a completion of a race where I'm not the last guy or I'm not sucking wind. Um, but I also think there's a bunch of elements to that, right? For me, going into Leadville, I've run 100 miles,
Yep.
before, but I'm going to have a completely different set of criteria and environmental
Oh yeah,
challenges to overcome. So even if I slow down, is that going to be enough? So
for sure.
feel good,
Yeah.
run. When you're tired, walk, get to the end.
Yeah, I feel like that the feeling good spots are the devil sitting on your shoulder going, "Come on, man.
Go faster,
Just go a little faster,
go
buddy.
faster.
Just do it." Yeah.
Yeah.
That sucks. um so GDK Mouse, the next time you go long, you have to keep us posted. I don't even know if that makes any sense for you. Um I feel like kind of intellectually that makes sense to me, and that's what I've tried to do actually yesterday on my run. I was with my daughter. She was on her bike in front of me on the trail that I was on, and that really helped. But I'll talk about that in a minute. So Silver Age Dave says 2022 is my most aggressive year. 7 100s between June 4th and October 16th. Good Christ on a cracker, dude. I open with back-to-backs at Mohican and Kettle Moraine, June 4 and 11, or June 4. Yeah, June 4
What?
and 11. What's that?
Back to back, like one weekend, then the next weekend?
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Nope.
Yep, nope. And close with a back-to-back at Indian Trail and Oil Creek on October 8th and 15th. I'm trying a new training plan and feeling behind schedule because of complex life schedule. The trick is always getting enough and not too much gear. I'm balancing 6+ pair of shoes. LOL, he says. Different terrain and demands, so lots of varieties. Breaking down a race, he does. Let me see if I can quite understand this. Yeah, so he goes 75, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5 plus. Interesting. So are you saying the first 75 miles, you're just kind of like, well, I'm just going to rip these out and then do 5 section blocks? That's interesting. Knowing the cutoffs and early on running with my abilities in the first 20, each race this year will be a lead up to the next. So my big goal is a good cry. Do you mean cry or is that try? Whatever it is. Hey, good cry. Hey, if I did all that, I'd have a
Uh,
good cry too.
seven ultras, 700s deep. I'm crying.
Yeah, for real. A good cry at the Oil Creek finish line, October 16th. Food and fueling before and between events. A couple celebration meals here and there, but mostly I'm avoiding costly caloric mistakes this year. Interesting show. Just subs, so I'll be tuning in for number 9. Be awesome. Thank you so much, Silver Age Dave. So, Aaron, this guy, Dave here, is going to cover 7 100s between June 4th and October 16th. So first, thoughts on that?
Um, I I don't even know where to start with that. I mean, I'm hoping Silver Hair Dave here is a beast because,
Yeah, dude.
um, I mean, to be fair, I think I think he knows. He's clearly experienced enough.
Yeah.
That he knows what he's doing.
You'd have
So
to
so
be.
first off, Dave, kudos.
Yeah.
I mean, to be able to try and figure out a training for 100 or 200 within a year is stressful enough. I
Absolutely.
can't imagine trying to jam 7 in there and then have back to backs. I mean, I want to speak to Dave after his first back to back. So after that second 200.
Yeah. Dave, please write in
Yeah,
June,
I
whatever
mean,
what that was. That's not that
what's
far
your
away.
what do you do for recovery? You just
Yeah.
cry in a bathtub?
Well, I think that at that point, you're probably your longer stuff is your training. Like you're not really having to train. It's just a matter of recovering in between those big things for the most part.
Sure, it's got to be, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
what's your longest week, Dave? I mean, and
Yeah.
in 8 days you're going to run 200 miles. So
Well, I wonder in a case like that, he says he's balancing 6+ pairs of shoes. So from a gear perspective, I get it. I mean, look, I balance 6+ pairs of shoes all the time, but I'm also not running that volume. So
hmm,
what I'm curious about is why unless you're doing reviews and things like that as well, Dave, in which case you've got to. But what I wonder is why that many shoes? Because if it's me, I might have like, and he said they're terrain considerations, right? So we talked about last week having a shorter lug for drier terrain and a longer lug for more damp and kind of muddier, peatier terrain, whatever. So if those things are the case, I think you would still, kind of try to pare that down so that your feet get more used to one thing. I don't know. That's actually a pretty complex question, I feel like, you know?
so yeah, I mean, I think of it like this: if like I have 3 pair of the same shoe, right?
Yep.
That I rotate because I'll wear, I won't wear the same pair twice in a row, 2 days in a
Yep.
row,
Yep.
to let the midsole recover.
Mm,
So if he's got 3 pair of road shoes, 4 pair of road shoes, they're the same shoe, just different colorways or whatever,
sure.
and a couple of different trail shoes, like that makes sense. I mean, I probably
Yeah,
have
that's
six
fair.
or eight, 6 or 8 that I blow through, and I buy them 2, 3 at a time, so I can
Yeah, so
go
maybe
three,
that's what he
4 months
means.
without having to buy them, right?
Yeah, so maybe that's what he means. Maybe I'm interpreting that wrong.
Well,
Yeah,
and
that
I have no idea. I'm thinking like I have Cliftons, and I have 4 pair of Cliftons, right?
yep.
That
Yep.
I filter through.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's interesting. Excuse me, from a gear perspective, how you would
yeah,
balance that. Because for me, there's one thing, there's something to be said for being able to run in different shoes, to be able to mix it up. It makes I think makes your foot kind of stronger to the end of being able to try all these different things and comfortably wear all these different things, and quite frankly to give better perspective on all these different things. But if you're prepping for that much volume, I guess that's kind of where I see the dividing
yeah.
line there. But maybe I'm wrong. Dave,
I hope,
would be lovely
yeah,
to hear, you
yeah.
know.
I hope you've got 8 pairs of Bondis that you're just going through. Because
Yeah, but they're but he's got to have some trails in there. I
okay,
mean, so maybe. Anywho, all
yeah.
right. Eric Paramount says even after running for 20 to 25 miles, no sudden moves. He puts in all caps. After that distance is just smart advice. See you in Leadville. He's going to be in Leadville, it sounds like. Hope to see you in Leadville.
Come on,
That would be awesome, man.
yeah.
By the way, anyone that's going to be there, let us know. We'll figure it out, man. It would be great to see you guys. And then John Sotomayor says he's about an hour from Hall Ranch. Might have to take a trip one day. Bring it on, dude. Bring it on. And so, with that, that is our comments. Let's talk about really quickly. I want to actually, Aaron, I want to hear about your kind of runs this past week. Like, how did they go? How are you feeling? And then we'll kind of, by way of talking about me, we'll talk about the illness thing and kind of how my week went. So, how was your week this past week?
It was good. I spent Monday through Friday in Chicago. So downtown this time. So I did do the Lakefront Trail, did the river walk, parts of that,
Okay.
ran through some downtown. It's interesting that we're talking about this topic. I know I asked last night or this morning what the topic was for the week, but allergies, man, they've been taking a toll. Not just through my family, but me more specifically when it comes to running. So it's some good runs, some bad runs, some runs spent a lot of time, looking to make sure I wasn't going to blow a snot rocket on the person next to me or the old lady walking a dog. So yeah, it was an interesting week. It wasn't a bad week, wasn't a great week, just an average mileage week.
Just kind of cranking out the mileage and ramping it up.
Trying, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So for me, the first thing that I'll say is that my base now, it's feeling like my baseline, like the lowest amount I'm going to run at any given day is going to be about 5 miles, or is 5 miles or just over it. And what I'm also trying to do is couple that with in between days, particularly when I have to take my daughter to swim practice. So I had a long run yesterday. Tonight I'll go take her to swim practice, and I'll walk while she's in practice. And I feel like that is the way to go, based around kind of just allowing my legs to have that active recovery. And it's funny, since I started doing that, I mean, you're going to be like, duh, but since I started doing that, like my recovery is much better. I'm not one who really ever deals with plantar fasciitis or anything like that, but I do get stiff kind of the day after. And certainly yesterday evening I was. But I feel pretty damn good this morning. I mean, to be honest with you, it's pretty awesome. So during the week it was good. I had a couple runs, or I had two runs that I didn't record in there. So I got about close to 30 miles this week. I forget off the top of my head. And again, they're kind of swim practice runs, right? But yesterday was my long run. And I did, let's see, I have it on my Strava right here, which, by the way, if you guys would like to follow Arron or myself on Strava, we always put the show links or show notes both on our video channels and on the just podcasts like Spotify or what have you. Down below in the show notes, you can check out our Instagram. Mine is at Gearist. Arron is at Arron with 2 R's, and Garrod with 2 R's also, Garrod. And our Strava is on there also. So mine yesterday was 10.43 miles. And if I weren't tired, and the particular run that I did is a picture rock in Lyons, Colorado, spelled Lyon. And if you go there, you kind of come down the trail, and the last 100 yards, 200 yards, because you're coming down, and it flat, and then it pitches up, and it pitches up not a ton, but when you're at the end of a longer trail run, like, it doesn't have to pitch up much for your body to be like, screw you, dude.
Yeah.
So it drives me nuts that it's 10.43 miles and not 10 and a half. So whatever.
You stop it at 10.43?
Not on purpose. Like, I didn't look at my watch. I was like, well, I'm now standing in the parking lot at the trailhead.
Do a lap in the parking lot.
Believe me, I almost did, but I had already hit stop because it's just like a reflex.
Sure. Yeah.
And so anyway, but I'll hold up to the screen here. That's kind of what the trail looks like. And then here is the elevation profile. So it's straight up. Yeah. And so with this particular trail, what's interesting is that it's part of a larger network. None of this really matters. I'll put a link to this in the show notes as well. It's not as steep as Hall Ranch that we talked about last week, but it just kind of is steadily uphill till this other trail junction, which, if you're looking at the map, it's part of a larger network that if you connected it all through, you'd be at 20 some miles easily. But where I was headed was about 5.3, 5.2 and some change miles out from the trailhead, flip it and come right back down. We were actually running into part of, if you followed any of the fires here in Colorado last summer or 2 summers ago, the Calwood fire, Calwood. I'll actually try to put a link to the Calwood fire information because it was pretty epic. But anyway, as you get to the top of it, it connects into what's called the larger Heil Ranch, Heil Ranch trail system. And there's a ton of burned stuff up there. From a geological, sure, botanical, from a earth sciences standpoint, a lot of the grasses and things like that are coming back, which are great because they prevent erosion. The forest management people have done an amazing job kind of coming back, because the big thing when a fire comes through is that it burns away all the underbrush, and then when it rains or snows, there's nothing to hold the dirt in place because the trees, a lot of them have died, and so to see the grasses come back is huge. So when my daughter was riding with me, so she got a new mountain bike for her birthday, um, first full suspension is a Scott Contessa, and so she was riding in front of me. It's a pretty technical trail in some places, um, and so it was good because running uphill, I am not that much slower than she is. A little bit, especially when it gets technical, but I'm not that much slower than she is on some of that stuff because it's just so steep. And so, what was very interesting is that I just kind of, it was a put my head down and grind. And I feel like, from an illness standpoint, because I was sick, right? I mean, straight up cold, full on. And it was a put my head down and grind. And it was almost weird because my cold allowed me to kind of dissociate myself to some degree. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're so worried about I don't know, you just kind of block everything out, and it helped me almost separate, you know? I'm sure my performance was diminished, performance such as it is, but like, my ability to just kind of put my head down and go was better, I feel like. So, um with that, and I had a good run all over. It was a little slow because there were certainly places where, on the way up, kind of the last mile and a half, last 2 miles probably of that, it gets pretty technical. So, um, I would actually kind of get up to Sydney and then have to help her over some stuff because, again, it's pretty technical. If you're a 12-year-old on a mountain bike, so she did a great job, but on the one hand, it gave me a chance to kind of rest, not really, because I was helping her walk up these crazy rocks and stuff like that. On the other hand, it gave me, it slowed me down a little bit, which, again, it's kind of like we were talking about with GDK Mouse, I think, talking about allowing yourself to kind of take it easier than you otherwise would have. So, but I found, and Aaron, first, before I read this article, this is an article from Mayo Clinic. Do you ever notice anything like that, or am I just kind of coming out of left field with that?
No, I mean, in fact, when I get a cold, the first thing I want to do is throw, extra layers on and go for a run. Like, that's my go-to, right? It's sweat it out,
Yep.
exercise it out, whatever. And I always find in those runs, it's not necessarily about the run as much as it is just feeling better.
Yeah.
And it's a different running experience because you're not necessarily focused on everything else going around you. You kind of zone into just running.
Yes. And it feels like maybe there's an endorphin hit there, you know?
Well, you've been feeling like doo-doo for,
Yeah.
all day or for a few days. And it's like, all right, let's go run. And you pump some blood into the brain, maybe back to what we've talked about in previous episodes. You get that blood going,
Yeah.
leaving other parts of your body that, it hasn't needed to work on. And yeah, endorphin rush, adrenaline, whatever. Yeah. I think that
Yeah.
definitely helps.
It's really interesting. Yeah, that's a good call. I used to, when I was singing, for those of you that don't know, I used to be a singer, an opera singer. And when I would first get big allergy hit or cold, like for the first 12 hours, I would be able to, it was crazy. Like, my voice just kind of locked in, and then it went to hell. But it was very interesting because it's almost like your body is giving you this big, okay, let's do this, before reality sets in. And then you're just like, bleh. So, this I got two articles, one from Healthline and one from the Mayo Clinic, both about kind of basically, is it okay to exercise if I have a cold? It's interesting in the world of COVID that we'll talk about this, so there'll be a little bit of context around that. Aaron, you had COVID, correct?
I did.
and so I had COVID twice. So we're talking both as two people who have had COVID. Um, and there's an element of that too, which both of us will be able to talk to. So this one, first one here is from Dr. Edward R. Laskowski. Again, I'll put a link to this so you guys can check it out. This is on mayoclinic.org. It says, is it okay to exercise if I have a cold? And he says, mild to moderate physical activity is usually okay if you have a common cold and no fever. Exercise may even help you feel better, as to what Arron was saying, by opening your nasal passages and temporarily relieving nasal congestion. As a general guide for exercise and illness. So now this is a general guide for exercise and illness. These 5 things he's about to list here, 4 things, not just for cold. He says number 1, exercise is usually okay if your signs and symptoms are all, quote, above the neck. These include a runny nose, nasal congestion, sneezing, and a minor sore throat. Consider reducing the intensity and length of your workout instead of going for a run. Take a hike or a walk, for example. Number 2, don't exercise if you're wait, first, Arron, I mean, do you notice that? Because I know for me, if it's below the neck, if my stomach is not in a good way, I'm much less motivated to go for a run. Let's just say.
Yeah, if it's south of the neck border,
yeah,
it's a no-go. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to spend my time in the woods. There's no point.
It sucks.
Yeah.
I've done that. That's how I know
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that anymore.
Me too. Yeah, trial and error, baby. Trial and error. So if it's again, head cold. No, if it's if I know it's a virus or viral or something like that, I'm not going to put myself in a position to get worse. So if I go to the doctor and it's like, hey man, you've got a pretty good sinus infection, I'd stay home for a few days. Stay home for a few days.
Yep.
May sit in a steam shower or something, but I'm not going to go exercise.
Yeah, but absolutely.
Cold. I mean, suck it up, buttercup, put a hoodie on and sweat it out.
Yeah. It seems like it depends for me on what stage it's in. Cause there is, I mean, and this is the way it was with COVID too. There's a part of it where you feel like you get hit by a truck and then it's kind of like, okay, well maybe I'll sit this one out,
Yeah. Well, I mean, stage of the cold, but I guess also stage of your training. Like, if I've got a decent head cold and I'm 2 weeks out from a race, I may not risk it.
Oh yeah, there's the element of live to fight another day, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the race is the ultimate goal, so don't mess around and screw that up. You know what I'm saying?
But now I'm still months out. I got a pretty good head cold. There's a good chance I mean, to the the author's point, I may just go for a hike. Or go to the gym and hop on the treadmill and bundle up and hike uphill for 30 minutes, but still gonna do something.
Absolutely. Number 2, he says, don't exercise if your signs or symptoms are below the neck, such as chest congestion, hacking cough, or upset stomach, which we just talked about. Number 3, don't exercise with people if you have COVID-19 or other contagious illnesses. Thank you for that. I feel like that's an unnecessary point to make. Number 4, don't exercise if you have a fever, fatigue, or widespread muscle aches. He says, let your body be your guide. If you feel miserable, take a break. A few days off from exercise when you're sick shouldn't affect your performance. Resume your normal workout routine gradually as you begin to feel better. Check with your doctor if you aren't sure whether it's okay to exercise. And if you do choose to exercise when you're sick, reduce the intensity and length of your workout. If you try to exercise at your normal intensity when you have more than a simple cold, you risk injury or more serious illness. So, the COVID aspect. Let's talk about that real quick, and we'll get into the second article here in a second. So, for me, if I recall correctly, so I had COVID first back in April of last year, so about 13 months ago. And the first time around, it was just kind of achy. Excuse me. So I had some coughing, stuff like that, right? But the biggest part for me was the achiness. And even that, it was just kind of control it with ibuprofen and acetaminophen, right? But I was also much more cognizant because it did get a little bit of that deep coffee thing where you're coughing up some stuff. It wasn't super hacky unless I was purposefully doing that to clear, right?
Sure.
But I still kind of kept walking because to me the way and maybe I'm wrong, I could be very wrong about this, but even with COVID, and it was, to be fair, before we get a bunch of crap about it, but it was always outside. I wasn't going to the gym, it wasn't anything like that. It was generally places where it was outside on a trail and away from a bunch of people. So but I'm walking, and I feel like your lungs and your body generally are going to produce more mucus or kind of loosen those things up. And so for the first few days that I had it, I would walk. Then kind of the Mack truck part hit. And then for the last kind of few days of it, it was better. And during the bookends, basically, I was trying to walk more. Not I wasn't doing anything intense. I don't think I went on a bike ride or anything like that, but it was basically to kind of get that moving so that the crap would loosen up in there. I mean, when you had COVID, did you do anything like that?
So I'm like a bad judge here because bad example. Um, I had COVID. I didn't even know I had COVID. I would say
There you go.
very minor, if any, symptoms.
Yeah.
Um, I ran. I got a found out I was positive on a Monday, and I ran through the end of the week as normal. Felt normal. Um, I would run, try to not run at peak times.
Okay.
Um, because when everyone came home at first, like our main bike path at the oceanfront was just littered with people. I mean,
Yeah.
every Tom, Dick, and Jane and their sister Sally came out to walk every day because they were home.
Yep.
So there were so many. So I wouldn't walk when the majority of people, or I wouldn't run when the majority of people were out. And I would wear a buff and just put it over when I passed anybody when I had COVID. But it never felt anything. And then after, I think it was day 6 or something, I was talking to a running buddy, and they were like, that could make it worse, right? The respiratory exertion could make COVID worse. And I'm like, is there any validity to that? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, he's a smart guy. He cited an article or something. So I'm like, all right, I'll take the next 5 days off and just let it go through. But I never felt bad. So again, I maybe no, yeah.
Well, and I think that I mean, this was in 2020.
Yeah, so COVID hit in March?
Yep.
And then this was July. So it was like right in the middle of summer.
So I mean, that's when everybody was guessing at everything, frankly, and
Right.
I'm sure that people have different varying opinions on all that stuff, but at the end of the day, we know that at that time everybody was guessing about everything, and 99% of everything they were guessing was wrong.
Wrong. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that was wrong, but I wonder if the damage that could have been done to you or me, perfectly healthy middle-aged guys, would be more apt, or not apt is the wrong word, but more likely in a case if we had some sort of pre-existing thing, or we're pushing it beyond, or whatever. But I think that doctor in the article I read a second ago, it was right when he said, listen to your body. And I feel like, again, it's funny, like we keep coming back to this in this episode, is it's putting that ego in check, right? Letting yourself kind of go, okay, I feel like I can run, but I feel like I can't go here. Whatever what here is. Is it 10 seconds a mile faster? What is that? So I feel like that's a big part of it. Is just listening to what's going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you took your watch off,
Yep,
and said, I'm going to go run on feel, I'm going to go be
good way to put it.
as comfortable as I am uncomfortable right now.
Yep.
And not go, like, you're probably fine there. Then you're not worried about your ego, your heart rate, or your whatever. You're just, 2 miles out. Like, everyone knows the 2-mile route from their house is go,
Right.
come back. Probably feel better.
Yeah. All right. So this next article, so that one I just read, that was a shorter article. It was written in, let me tell you guys correctly, because it matters, I feel like, February 23rd of this year, 2022. This next one was written April 27th of 2020. I don't think that it's Dr. Angela M. Bell. This is on Healthline. Again, I'll have this article so that you guys can check it out. I don't think that she addresses COVID, but we'll get to it here in a second. And it was so close at that time. that we don't really know. Again, people are just kind of guessing. I think people were just trying to figure it out, you know. So anyway, let's see what she says. She says exercise, such as running, can help protect you against the common cold. It helps by boosting your immune system and reducing, excuse me, your levels of stress hormones. If you have a cold, it can be tempting to want to continue your running routine, especially if you're training for a race or working toward a fitness goal. If you want to know whether it's safe to continue running when you have a cold, this article has the answers. We shall see. Should you run if you have a cold? If you have a cold, you may experience a variety of symptoms that last for around 7 to 10 days, including a runny nose, congestion, sore throat, coughing, sneezing, headache. There are many factors to consider before working out while sick. This includes the severity of your symptoms as well as the intensity of your workout. Here are some general recommendations for running when you have a cold. She says, when you can run, if your cold is mild and you don't have much congestion, it's usually safe to work out. A good rule of thumb is to consider the location of your symptoms. When your symptoms are located above your neck, similar to the other guy, you may be able to exercise safely, but it's still a good idea to take it easy. This will help your immune system fight off the cold as you continue being physically active. You can dial down your running routine by decreasing the length and intensity, jogging instead of running, taking brisk walks instead of running. Good call. She says, when it's best not to run, avoid running if you have more severe symptoms. This includes fever and any symptoms that are below your neck, such as, and before I list the such as, I did not have a fever during this last cold. I took my temperature, which is normally, it runs pretty low. So it was about 97.8 the whole time. She says fatigue, chest congestion. I don't know that I agree with the fatigue thing. I feel like if you're sick, you're going to feel a little fatigued, right? I mean,
Yeah, I'm healthy. I'm fatigued.
yeah. That's that grit part, dude. It's getting
Yeah,
up every day. I was up at 5:30 today. It's 4:25 p.m. I'm fatigued.
yeah, yeah.
um, let's see. Chest congestion, chest tightness, hacking cough, trouble breathing, upset stomach, nausea, vomiting, muscle or joint aches. For sure. And a lot of those, by the way, are COVID. Like there is, I don't know about a hacking cough that I felt, but certainly coughing and aches. So, yeah, uh, these symptoms may indicate more serious sickness, COVID. Exercising with these kinds of symptoms could prolong your recovery time or worsen your illness. Plus, if you have a fever, running could increase the risk of dehydration or heat related illness. That is a good call. It's best to stay home and rest if you have more symptoms. If you must work out, opt for gentle stretching. Let's see here. What are the possible side effects if you run with a cold? It's generally safe to run with a mild cold. There are some possible risks. This may include dehydration, worsening symptoms, dizziness, or difficulty breathing. The side effects could depend on the severity of your symptoms. Additionally, you're more likely to experience side effects if you run at your normal intensity. If you have a chronic condition like asthma or heart disease, talk to your doctor first. Running with a cold may exacerbate your existing condition. Um, so she says a little bit more, but one of the things I wanted to say is the dehydration piece. I didn't think about that. That's actually a really good call. You know?
I mean, I agree. That's something I didn't think of. I think they need to clarify the aches and pains.
Yeah.
I would say any unfamiliar aches or pains.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I mean, if you're putting 60 miles a week in,
You're
you're
probably gonna be a little stiff.
little. I mean, yes. I mean, muscle soreness,
Yeah.
knee joint, like the typical everyday aches and pains. But
Yeah.
like if you're getting up and like your back hurts and your arms hurt, and it's the things that don't normally ache or have send you pain, then yeah, I would maybe reconsider working out
Yeah.
that day.
100%. And let's keep in mind, everybody listening, and myself and Aaron, um, before 2 years ago, there was this virus called influenza, which apparently doesn't exist anymore. And what's interesting about that is that the symptoms were, I don't know, the exact same thing as flu or as COVID. Not for everybody. I'm certainly not discounting those people that have much more effects than that, nor the people that had much more severe side effects from influenza than I have ever. But influenza, like flu, when I was growing up, I thought that flu was the pukey thing. That's not flu. That's was that norovirus, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not flu. Flu is a respiratory virus, and it is accompanied by a lot of aches and things like that. I can remember being in high school, and I was a ridiculously in shape swimmer, and having my back feel like it was just on fire, achy. And then I had kind of similar with COVID, right? So like, don't forget that these aches and pains, they're going to tell you. And again, it's your ego. Don't go, oh, my back just hurts, I'm a little stiff today. If you're really sick and you're feeling that, just take it easy, you know. And I go ahead.
A lot of these are going to be coupled, right? You're
Yeah.
not just going to wake up and be like, "Oh, my body feels sore today."
Yeah,
You're going to have a
exactly.
headache. You're going to be coughing. Like, think about it. Like, these are going to be coupled symptoms that you're not going to have one. You're probably going to have two, three, four of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe take a day off or two.
Yeah, and I would also say, and I don't know if I'm right or wrong about this, but like, you know, generally speaking, you shouldn't be taking a lot of pain NSAIDs, right? Non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So ibuprofen or acetaminophen. You shouldn't be taking a bunch of NSAIDs and then working out anyway. I think it's not great for your liver, apparently. So doing that to get over the back pain, only to exercise and jack up your liver, probably not the best trade-off in the world. Probably not. So she says, what type of exercise is safe if you have a cold? Running isn't the only way to stay active. If you have a cold, try doing other types of exercise. Safe options include walking, jogging, leisurely biking, stretching, or doing gentle yoga. Avoid activities that require high levels of physical exertion. I will say that when I did come out of COVID, and some things like that, I was doing more yoga. Um, and I'm not a yoga person. I will say that it got a little easier. I'm kind of a wuss, to be very honest with you, about yoga. And it's just because I'm not flexible and I never have been. But that's not to say that I can't do it. There's actually, and I'll actually put a link to this. You know what? I might be able to insert a little thing here somewhere. You guys should check out Yoga with Adrian. She's a great YouTube channel. Um, I think I'm spelling her name right. Anyway, if you just go on YouTube and search for Yoga with Adrian, she has hundreds of videos, and they're things that are 10 minutes for total beginners. She has yoga for runners, yoga for pregnant people, all these different things, and they're different levels of skill and ability. And it's really wonderful. And one of the things that's interesting about her is she'll sit up and she's just like, all right, well, look, if you can't do this because your hamstrings are tighter than a drum, then just bend your knees a little bit. It's okay. And it's very like accepting. And for me, though, again, it's ego. I look at her doing that and I'm like, well, you're just like a very bendy, 20 something, and you can do that. And I'm like, well, damn it, I want to be able to do that too. And my wife is like, hey, you're not a bendy 20 something. You're a non-bendy 40 something.
Yeah.
So maybe check that ego a little bit, homie. You know?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Like, yoga is, I get scared of yoga. I think it's for the same reason.
Yes.
Because,
Yes.
touch
Yeah.
your toes. Like, okay. And I bend over and, you know, I got to touch my toes. I'm like sitting down on the ground. There's my feet. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I need to get back to that. Actually, I was doing it pretty like 2 or 3 times a week for a while there, and I need to get back to it because it feels good. I mean, it really does. I just have to do it. It's as simple as that. Everybody
Yeah.
go do some yoga. Tell me how it goes. Actually, leave a comment. I'm curious if you guys, when you are sick, what you guys do. So we'll kind of ask some more things about what you guys do. So, real quick, when is it safe to start running again? As your cold symptoms subside, you can start easing back into your normal running routine. For many people, cold symptoms will start to get better about 7 days. Be sure to resume your exercise gradually, starting slowly. Work your way up incrementally until you are back to your usual running routine. This will help ensure that your body has enough time and energy to fully recover. And then she gives some just general tips for treating a cold. which we won't really get into, except to say, gargle salt water. You guys, gargle salt water. It's really great for you. Kills all kinds of stuff in there. You know what I'm saying? Get rid of all
Make
that
sure
stuff.
you do it when you've got a cold sore inside too.
Oh, yeah, it's good look. It's good look. I did when I had COVID the second time, we got these nasal lavage. So it's like you guys know what a neti pot is. So Neil Med makes the same thing, and it's kind of like a neti pot, same principle as neti pot, but it's a bottle that you fill up, and there's a top on it with a hole in it. You fill it up, warm water, whatever, and squeeze, and the water comes out. Instead of neti pot, you kind of pour into one nostril and pours out the other. This one you squeeze up one, it kind of comes out the other. And it was with betadine in it, right? So brown soap, and it's very diluted. So don't you can go anybody can go find this, and it's not just something for COVID. It's something for whatever, any sort of kind of nasal. And the second time I had it was Omicron, right? So that's very much in the mask, in the nasal, the nasopharynx. So when I was doing that, that was the point, is to flush all that crap out of there, and did it like once or twice a day. That's a wild feeling. Uh, it's just you put your head over the sink and like, yeah, don't do it with anyone that you're trying to impress because there's just so much crap. Yeah, you look like some sort of weird dragon. Yeah. Anyway, but the point in saying that is to say that it's kind of a similar principle to gargling salt water, right? To get in and flush out all the crap that's in there, you know? So guys, I want to hear. I mean, Arron, what is of those things that you do that I do, which seems actually fairly similar? What are some things that are you're curious about other people doing? Like, I'm curious if people are. How much are you taking down? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be really curious to understand if you're doing an ultra, like you're mid ultra training and you get sick, what do you do?
Yeah.
Or do you stop? Do you go to the doctor? Do you take, you know, 2 days and sit in the sauna all day? Like, super curious. I know there's a lot of uh, recovery research around like the ice bath to sauna to ice bath to
Yep.
sauna. Like, I I've always been curious, like, would that help with a cold? Like, would
Yeah.
the extremes help there? I know that's more around the muscles, but when it comes to respiratory and things like that, I'm curious. Yeah, what are they doing? What are the people out there? What are you guys doing
Yeah.
to recover from being sick? How much are you doing while you're sick? And is it dependent on where you are in your training?
Yeah. And one more bit time back to that ego is if you're training for a big event now, and that can be anything, right? It could be honestly, it could be a 10K. But if you're training for a big event, a marathon or an ultra, can you, people in general, also Arron, also Brandon, can you set aside your ego enough and having trained for so many months to pull out of that event if you need to?
No, no.
No.
I mean,
Great.
unless I'm in a stretcher, I'm probably going to show up.
Got it. Yeah, right. I mean, that's the ego coming in, and I
I will
get it.
say, if I'm sick,
Yeah.
goals will change dramatically, right?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
recovering from sick, goals may change slightly.
Sure.
I'm too much of a ding dong to. I was sick last week. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
But if I'm 3 weeks out of being sick, yeah, full steam. Let's rock and roll.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It's a tricky thing, man. I don't know if I would. I will say so. I was running the Philadelphia Marathon one year, and I was pretty trained up for it, like feeling pretty good. I was probably expecting uh two 310, give or take. But at about before the half, at about mile 11 or 12, my stomach just fell apart. Um, and so that race at that point in time, not unlike the Shamrock event, um, you could split off, like the half would split off and go to the finish, and the full would keep on going. And so, fortunately, I was right before the half, and that's exactly what I did. So after spending a minute in the restroom, um, I finished up the half, and I think I ran like a 140 or something. So nothing like world changing, but yeah, it was. I knew that my stomach was not gonna hold out,
I
for
mean,
another.
you got 14 more miles.
No, not gonna go well. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's kind of like they're saying, it's, I don't know, it just seems so much of this is about ego. It's very interesting. Yeah, I'd be curious to hear what everybody does. And by the way, I'd be curious to hear, kind of on a separate note, how much yoga are you guys doing? Now, we'll talk about strength training at some point, but from a yoga standpoint. So so three questions for you guys on, and in addition to all the stuff about colds. Are you doing yoga? I'd love to hear that. If so, how frequently? Questions 2 and 3, do you stretch before or do you stretch after running? I think I tend to do more dynamic stuff. I actually use the first, it depends, 15-20 minutes of a run as my kind of dynamic warm up. So I don't really stretch beforehand. But I try to stretch after, and I'm really bad about it, or foam roll or something like that. So what are you guys doing? I'd be curious to hear. That has nothing to do with what we talked about today, but I'm just curious to hear.
Right.
So,
It's funny because I'm the guy who gets out of his car and exactly like you said, I spend the first half mile to 2 miles warming my body up.
yep.
And where I typically run, especially like in the afternoons, you have the high schoolers, the high school cross countries coming over there. Those guys are spending 15, 20 minutes stretching and warming up and doing strides, and then they go on the run. I mean, it sounds great in theory, and I know I'd probably be better if I did
Yeah.
it, but it seems like a lot of work, man.
I used to, though, I will say, and I'll get back to this when, so the bigger problem for me was that my runs just weren't long enough to warrant taking 20 minutes just to warm up.
It's a time crunch, right?
Yeah.
You've got an hour. You want to run for an hour. You don't want to spend
Yes.
20 minutes in the front stretching and 10 minutes in the back stretching. Now you got a 30-minute run, and it's like,
Yeah.
what's the
Well, so
point?
now though they're getting longer. So for me to do 20 minutes, and if I do 20 minutes, it's not a distance thing, right? But if I do a 20-minute very slow warm up, very slow, like keeping my heart rate very low, um, that frequently helps. But again, it's ego, and it's a time crunch. So, but as I'm kind of having to adjust my schedule and get up early to run in the morning, things like that, adjust my schedule, I'm gonna tack that on, because now that my baseline is 5 miles, that's probably, you know, I mean, depending on what surface, that's close to 2 miles. Not quite. Um, but just doing 20 minutes, even if it's walking, sometimes it's a big help just to kind of get the body going. So I'm going to try to do that more. We should
Agreed.
talk about that more. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you all so much. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'd love to hear your comments, as we mentioned several times during this episode. Let us know what you guys think. Follow us both on Instagram if you can. And also, you can reach out to us there. Tell us what you think. We talked a little bit about the Speed Goat 5 from Hoka last week. There will be a review coming up from that on Gearist later this week, as well as my first ever review of Superfeet. So I actually had a shoe by Merrill that I'm really liking, that I'm going to do a review also this week, and I put that sock liner in it because the stock sock liner was giving me a bit of a hot spot over 5 miles, and so this Superfeet thing, I am generally not an orthotics guy, and I don't know that I would call this an orthotic more than kind of a replacement sock liner, to be honest with you. But I was pretty freaking amazed with it. So I'm excited to talk to you guys about that. Arron is also running the Speed Goat 5, so he's going to have some input as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Arron, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you guys, and we will talk to you next week.
Next
Thanks,
week.
guys. Bye.